Hello everyone. I came here to talk about graphic design, which is a bit funny because I think language actually poses quite some barriers to effective communication. Just think about the people in the audience who don't speak English, but they're kind of excluded from the message I'm here to tell. So this doesn't have such problems. It can cross language barriers, it can cross generational barriers, and it can cross even cultural barriers. So it's super effective and yet so simple. Actually, it's an icon amongst icons. It's simply lovely. I really like it. This is also graphic design done right. And speaking about graphic design and how powerful it is, let me ask you, since you all learned the language over multiple years, who of you has received in-depth education in graphic design? Hands up. So I don't see many hands. Actually, I see just one hand there. I'm a scientist and I do ask this question to rooms full of scientists as well. And the answer is exactly the same. There's only usually a handful of scientists that have ever received education in graphic design. And as you can imagine, this is a bit of a problem because it's scientists that put out all these important figures for the world to see. And these figures are meant to facilitate understanding, but often they actually complicate it, make it harder to understand some scientific content. Often these figures are bad because we misuse color. Color is a powerful tool in graphic design and can show you relationships in your data, help to interpret your data. But when misused, color can actually distort the data. It can even mislead the reader. And in the worst case, it can actually exclude readers from understanding your message. This really becomes then more of a question of a problem of science communication. To solve this problem, you need to develop something. And many years ago, I was sitting at my table as a scientist and started to think about this problem because I was developing a software and tried to visualize my data. And then I started to think about color, and I realized I know nothing about color, but that color is really important to visualize my data properly. So that moment at that table has set me on a path to develop the scientific color maps. And this really started as a kind of personal challenge and then evolved into a year-long, almost career-long project to develop scientific color maps that are accurate and are inclusive for everyone to look at. Fast forward a few years, these color maps are used in a myriad of publications online, in science figures online, even in IPCC climate reports, in heritage maps, and even in medical MRI imaging. So how is something as simple as color suddenly so important? And for that we need to understand how color is used in science. Color can be used as decoration, like we use it basically on a daily basis. But in science it can also be used as an information carrier. And when do we use color as an information carrier? So usually we do that in data visualization. And as an example, before seeing data visualizations like this one here, and you're wondering about the weather, how it is today or tomorrow, you open your phone and your weather app, and then you usually look at the map of your region, and you wonder about the temperature that is forecasted. And this temperature, the values across this region are then usually shown as color, different colors. And to understand these different colors on the map, you need a scale. And the scale basically translates the numeric values, temperature in this case, to a certain color. So you have blue colors usually for cold temperatures, red colors for hot temperatures, and then all the temperatures in between are represented by kind of continuous gradient from blue to red. Now the scale needs to fulfill certain aspects to not distort this temperature field. And for that we can look at the normal ruler to understand how this scale needs to behave. So if you had a normal ruler like this, which is a really bad ruler, it would be impossible to build a house with such a ruler. And this is almost the same representation of a bad color scale. So the bad color scale you see on top is bad because it doesn't represent the changes in value, which are even, as a change in color, which should be even. But in this case, the change in color actually is not even. So it starts with like the values from 0 to 1 to 2, kind of bluish, all the same. Whereas the same change in data, the values from 6 to 7 to 8 actually go through yellow, orange, and red, 3 different colors, 3 different hues. So the same change in data there looks like much more than it actually is. And the same change at the left-hand side of the color scale looks like much less than it actually is. So this is a visual distortion of the data. So this is a bad color map. And instead you could use a scientific color map like shown here, where you can see that there is an even change of color all along the color scale, from left to right, from low values to high values. And this is, we want to use the analogy again with the ruler, and we would use a proper ruler like this to build a proper house. So when you use a bad color scale, you introduce quite a big error to your data. But when this error is so big, why do scientists in particular still use bad color scales? And to answer this, you need to understand that scientists usually don't know a priori how their data looks like. Just to think about some underground measurements. No one has seen the underground before you do the measurements. So you look at the measurements, and to look at them, you already visualize them in certain colors. So you have no idea whether they are the correct solution or whether they're some distorted version of the truth. So to visualize that and kind of clarify, you can take some data set of which you know how it looks like in advance. For example, a picture of Einstein, we know how it looks like, so we just use the lightness values and we recolor them based on a bad color scale on the left-hand side and a good color scale on the right-hand side. And what you see is that the original picture is hardly recognizable anymore, especially if you look at the face of Einstein, which is hugely distorted, whereas if you use a scientific uneven color map, you can see it perfectly well, and it's basically flawless. So this is the first very important point, to use scientific color scales in scientific data visualization. So I could basically stop my talk here because this is my main message, to not use bad color scales. But I can double down on it with another important factor, which is quite critical, and this is about accessibility. So have you ever thought about the traffic light? Why do they have 3 separate lights instead of just one that changes color? Right? It would be much cheaper to produce, probably. And yet, basically on the whole planet, we use traffic lights with 3 separate lights. This is due to clarity and due to the fact that some people can't really differentiate green, orange, and red. Here on the right-hand side, you see a simulation of color vision deficiency. And basically you see a simulation how some people, this might be your neighbors here in the audience, see color. We all see color a bit different. Some people see color very different than we do. And we need to account for that, not only on our streets, but also inside. So accuracy and accessibility are key in scientific visualization. And I try to account for that when I created the scientific color maps, which is basically a package full of color maps for all your different data sets, so you can visualize them. And I will provide them for free and openly. And they're based on the principle of perceptual uniformity, which makes them accurate to use as scales, which basically just means that the color changes are equal from one color to the next. So you have an even gradient in the end. And they're also color vision deficiency friendly and even readable in black and white, which you can see on these color bows or color bars, where they show some color palettes from the scientific color maps, and at the bottom you see the conversion of these individual colors onto grayscale, and you can still differentiate and read about. So these color maps are used widely across disciplines, from biology to climate and space science, all the way to public health. So the impact of accessible and accurate designs and graphics in science is far-reaching. Just think about public health. For example, if you have a disease outbreak, God forbid again, or you want to communicate some hazard, you can't just do that to a few people. You need to do that to everyone in the room and everyone in the world, basically. So this then doesn't become just a choice of color. It becomes a real responsibility to do it right. So what can we all do to make the change for the better? First, we need to be aware how we use color and how the color we choose impacts the people that will interact with our work. So here are 3 simple things that you can do today. First, use scientific color maps that are accessible and accurate. Second, don't rely solely on color. Use textures, patterns, and labels to indicate important features in our data and interpret them. And then third, test your figures. When you have finalized your figures, use online simulators for color vision deficiency, or just convert them into black and white. So on a number 1 priority, however, will be to start teaching graphic design and data visualization at university level, and start treating data visualization as that very important scientific methodology that it actually is. This will be key. Can you believe that most scientists still don't learn how to make proper figures? If we prioritize scientific visualization that is accessible and accurate, we don't just make our figures more clear, we make them more impactful. So this is our chance to change the way science is understood and to make that change for the better. We should use that power wisely, with purpose and with care. The colors we use in our figures might always seem like small details, but they can make all the difference. Thank you very much.